Angela Rayner has done it again. In a fiery and controversial interview, the Deputy Prime Minister declared that Britain's housing crisis will no longer be held hostage by wildlife protections. Yes, folks, newts, bats, and even the beloved kittiwake birds are in the crosshairs as Labour rolls out its aggressive housing strategy. But is this a bold step forward or a slap in the face of conservation efforts? And as if the housing chaos wasn't enough, Labour's 1.5 million homes pledge is being branded as teetering on the edge of disaster due to Britain's severe shortage of builders. Let's dive into this explosive story. You won't believe what happens next.
You do know, by the way, you're saying 1.5 million homes.
Yes.
Is this incredibly ambitious? Have a look at this graphic. You can see here that actually, if you hit your target, you're only going to deliver an extra 9 homes per 1,000 people. Not very much, is it?
Well, as we said before, Trevor, we haven't seen house building on this scale since the 1950s after the Second World War. It is an incredibly ambitious programme, but we're determined to deliver it. That's around planning reform, so we get these systems up and running quicker. Many developments are always stuck and clogged in the planning system. We have to have the infrastructure alongside that. That's why we're focusing ministers and our planning reforms later this year into making sure that national infrastructure is part of that programme. And we're making sure we're injecting more money into the Affordable Homes Programme and house building.
Well, look, let me see if I can be helpful here. It would speed things up if some of the reasons for objections were removed. For example, in your own borough, housing developments have been stopped on the grounds that they're shading somebody else's land, or that they don't quite fit in with the local ambience and so on. Are you going to take out some of the conditions by which people can object and stop development?
Yes, and that's why we're coming forward next week with the National Plan.
Give me a couple of examples. Oh, great! Give me a couple of examples of things that aren't going to be reasons to object.
So we're clarifying the National Planning Policy Framework, which you'll see next week, which has clear guidance, which will mean that if they meet the environmental standards, don't worry, they still have to be beautiful, and that's all still in there. But actually, it's about unblocking some of the subjective reasons as to why planning doesn't go ahead.
Angela Rayner's blunt comments have sent shockwaves through political circles and environmental groups alike. In her interview with Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips, the Deputy Prime Minister didn't mince words about Labour's intentions. She made it clear that their housing strategy is non-negotiable, even if it means stepping on a few amphibian toes along the way. We can look after wildlife, but at the same time, not stop building, Rayner asserted, signalling a dramatic shift in the political approach to balancing ecological preservation with urban development. Labour's housing strategy, unveiled last week by Sir Keir Starmer, aims to construct 1.5 million homes and push through 150 major infrastructure projects by 2029. It sounds ambitious, right? Too ambitious, according to critics. The reaction to Rayner's comments has been swift and unforgiving. Conservationists have slammed her as reckless for suggesting that wildlife protections could be relaxed, warning that this could lead to irreversible damage to ecosystems. The Green Party's Caroline Lucas called Rayner's comments dangerous, accusing Labour of sacrificing the environment for short-term political gain. But that's just the beginning of the drama. The challenges Labour faces in meeting its housing targets go far beyond newts and bats. A glaring problem lies in the numbers. To hit their goal, the UK would need to build 900 homes per day until the next general election. Achieving this would require an estimated 300,000 additional workers in the construction industry, a workforce that simply doesn't exist in Britain right now. This Labour shortage has sparked a fierce debate over immigration. Nigel Farage wasted no time weighing in, branding Labour's strategy madness. He argued that bringing in foreign labour to meet the housing demands would only exacerbate the crisis, driving up migration numbers and, ironically, increasing the demand for housing. This takes us straight back to square one, Farage fumed. This madness has got to end. But Farage isn't alone in raising concerns. Even industry experts are sounding the alarm. Celebrity builder Ian Hodgkinson described Labour's housing plan as teetering on the edge of disaster, warning that the country doesn't just lack the workers, it also lacks the materials. To meet Labour's ambitious goals, the UK would need 6 billion bricks, 20 million tonnes of concrete, and 5 million tonnes of timber. The logistics, Hodgkinson argues, simply don't add up. Meanwhile, Labour Housing Minister Matthew Pennycook has been scrambling to defend the plan. He insists that Labour won't rely on high migration to fill the workforce gap, but sceptics aren't buying it. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp went as far as to suggest that the plan might inadvertently deepen the housing crisis, as importing workers also means housing those workers, a catch-22 that leaves Labour's proposal on shaky ground. Amid this storm, Angela Rayner is doubling down. When pressed by Trevor Phillips on what would happen if local councils failed to meet housing targets, she hinted at a more authoritarian approach. Plans would be compulsory, Rayner declared, adding that the government could intervene if councils failed to deliver. Ultimately, if they don't have a local plan, then we will have to look at delivery. The implications of this are staggering. Critics have already accused Labour of overreach, with some branding the potential for government intervention as heavy-handed and undemocratic. But Rayner was unapologetic, arguing that drastic measures are necessary to solve the housing crisis. As if this domestic chaos wasn't enough, Labour is also dealing with a major international development. Over the weekend, Syrian rebels took control of Damascus, marking the dramatic fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime. Sir Keir Starmer welcomed the news, calling Assad's departure long overdue and pledging UK support to restore stability in the region. But not everyone is celebrating. While Starmer hailed the fall of Assad as a victory for human rights, Rayner struck a more cautious tone. She warned that Syria's future remains uncertain, especially with extremist groups like Hayat Tahrir al-Sham vying for power. Dictatorship and terrorism create problems for the people of Syria and destabilise the region, Rayner said, emphasising the need for a balanced approach. Labour's handling of the Syrian crisis has drawn mixed reactions. On one hand, the UK government was praised for evacuating British citizens from the region before the situation escalated. On the other hand, critics have accused Starmer of focusing too much on international optics while neglecting domestic issues. With Labour juggling the housing crisis, immigration debates, and now international diplomacy, questions are growing louder. Can they handle it all without dropping the ball? Angela Rayner's comments about housing and wildlife protections may have been aimed at sending a strong message, but they've opened up a Pandora's box of political and logistical challenges. Labour's housing pledge is now under scrutiny from all angles: environmentalists, industry experts, and even its own critics within Parliament. The clock is ticking, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If Labour can't deliver on its ambitious promises, it risks not only alienating key voter bases, but also undermining its credibility as a party ready to govern. And with the Syrian crisis adding yet another layer of complexity, Starmer and Rayner are walking a tightrope. One misstep could send their entire strategy crashing down. Is Labour's housing pledge bold progress or a recipe for disaster? And what do you make of the fallout from Syria? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more scandal-filled updates. We've got every twist and turn covered.